IELTS relating reading passes to you should spend about 20 minutes on questions 14 to 26, which are based on reading passes to below. Palm oil. Palm oil is an edible oil derived from the fruit of the African oil palm tree and is currently the most consumed vegetable oil in the world. It's almost certainly in the soap we wash with in the morning, the sandwich we have for lunch, and the biscuits we snack on during the day. Why is palm oil so attractive for manufacturers? Primarily because its unique properties such as um, remaining solid at room temperature make it an ideal ingredient for long-term preservation, allowing many packaged foods on supermarket shelves to have best before dates of months, even years into the future. Many farmers have seized the opportunity to maximize the planting of oil palm trees. Between 1990 and 2012, the global land area devoted to growing oil palm trees grew from 6 to 17 land area to 17 million hectares, now accounting for around 10% of total cropland in the entire world. From a mere 2 million tons of palm oil being produced annually globally 50 years ago, there are now around 60 million tons produced every single year, a figure looking likely to double or even triple by the middle of the century. However, there are multiple reasons why conservationists cite the rapid spread of oil palm plantations as a major concern. There are countless news stories of deforestation, habitat destruction, and dwindling species populations, all as a direct result of plant clearing to establish oil palm tree manufacture on an industrial scale, particularly in Malaysia and Indonesia. Endangered species, most famously the Sumatran orangutan, but also rhinos, elephants, tigers, and numerous other fauna have suffered from the unstoppable spread of oil palm plantations. Palm oil is surely one of the greatest threats to global biodiversity, declares Dr. Fawnon Elwood of the University of the West England research. Palm oil is replacing rainforest, and rainforest is where all the species are. That's a problem. This has led into some radical questions among environmentalists, such as whether consumers should try to boycott palm oil entirely. Meanwhile, Bhavani Shankar, professor at London School of Oriental and African Studies, argues it's easy to say that palm oil is the enemy and we should be against it. It makes for a more dramatic story and it is very intuitive. But given the complexity of the argument, I think a much more nuanced story is closer to the truth. One response to the boycott movement has been the argument about the vital role palm oil plays in lifting many millions of people in the developing world out of poverty. Is it desirable to have palm oil boycotted, replaced, eliminated from the global supply chain, given how many low-income people in developing countries depend on it for their livelihoods? How best to strike a utilitarian utilitarian balance between these competing factors has become a serious bone of contention. Even the deforestation argument isn't as straightforward as it seems. Oil palm plantations produce at least 4 and potentially up to 10 times more oil per hectare than soybean, rapeseed, sunflower, or other competing oils. That immensely high yield, which is predominating what makes it so profitable, is potentially also an ecological benefit. If 10 times more palm oil can be produced from a patch of land than any competing oil, then 10 times more land would need to be cleared in order to produce the same volume of oil from that competitor. As for the question of carbon emissions, the issue really depends on what oil palm trees are replacing. Crops vary in the degree to which they sequester carbon. In other words, the amount of carbon they capture from the atmosphere and stored within the plant. The more carbon our plant sequesters, the more it reduces the effect of climate change. As Shankar explains, palm oil production actually sequesters more carbon in some ways than other alternatives. Of course, if you are cutting down a virgin forest, it's terrible. That's what's happening in Indonesia and Malaysia. It's been allowed to get out of hand. But if it is replacing rice, for example, it might actually sequester more carbon. The industry is now regulated by a group called the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, RSPO, consisting of palm growers, retailers, product manufacturers, and other interested parties. Over the past decade or so, an argument has gradually been reached regarding standards that producers of palm oil have to meet in order to their product and to be regarded as officially sustainable. The RSPO insists upon no virgin forest clearing, transparency, and regular assessment of carbon stocks, among other criteria. Only once these requirements are fully satisfied, is the oil allowed to be sold as certified sustainable palm oil, CSPO. Recent figures show that the RSPO now certifies around 12 million tons of palm oil annually, equivalent to roughly 21% of the world's total palm oil production. There is even hope that oil palm plantations might not need to be such sterile monocultures or green deserts as Alwood describes them. New research at Alwood's lab hints at one plant which might make all the difference. The bird's nest fern, Asplenium nidus, grows on trees in an epiphytic fashion, meaning it's depending on the tree only for support, not for nutrients, and is native to many tropical regions where, as a keystone species, it performs a vital ecological role. Elwood believes that reintroducing the bird's nest fern into oil palm plantations could potentially allow these areas to recover their biodiversity and providing a home for all manner of species, from fungi and bacteria to invertebrates such as insects, insects, amphibians, reptiles, and even mammals.